Hey everyone, this is kind of embarrassing, but I don't know where else to go. I need to tell someone what's been happening, but I can't talk to my friends about it. They'd think I've lost it. Maybe they're right. Maybe I have. But if I don't get this out, I feel like I'm going to lose my mind. I moved into my grandmother's house about 3 months ago. She passed away last year and it was left to me. I wasn't exactly thrilled about it. Moving into a big, creaky old house alone, you know? But I thought, why not? It's rent-free and I could use the space to save some money. The house itself is one of those old Victorian types, all faded wallpaper and heavy wooden doors. It smells like dust and wood polish, and the floors creak even when you're not walking on them. But that's normal for houses this old, right? At first, everything was fine. I spent the first couple of weeks just cleaning up, unpacking, trying to make the place feel like home. It was almost peaceful in a way. Quiet. But not long after, strange things started happening. It was little things at first. I'd hear a tapping noise at night, like someone was knocking on the walls from inside them. I figured it was just the pipes. This house is old, after all. But then I started noticing cold spots in the rooms. Not just a draft, but pockets of air that were ice cold, like stepping into a freezer. I kept checking the windows, thinking I'd left one open, but they were always shut. I thought it was odd, but I brushed it off. Then the whispers started. It was late at night, maybe 2 or 3 in the morning. I had just fallen asleep when I woke up to what sounded like someone murmuring outside my bedroom door. It wasn't loud, just soft, almost like someone trying to keep quiet. At first, I thought maybe I'd left the TV on, but when I got up, the house was completely silent. I told myself it was nothing, that I was half asleep and hearing things. But after that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone in the house. The thing is, these whispers, they don't sound like just one voice. They're layered, like a bunch of voices speaking at once, all too quiet to make out. And they never stop. Sometimes I hear them in the walls when I'm making dinner. Other times, they come from the attic. But they're always there, just below the surface, like they're waiting for me to hear something I'm not supposed to. I even started having weird dreams. At first, they were just unsettling, walking through the house and seeing things out of place, or hearing the whispers but never finding the source. But they've gotten worse. Now it's always the same. I'm walking through the house, but it's darker than usual, like the shadows are thicker, almost solid. I can barely see, but I feel like something is watching me from the corners of the rooms. It's like the house is alive. There's this one part of the dream that keeps repeating. I walk into the kitchen and the door to the basement is open. I know, in the dream, that I shouldn't go down there, but I can't help myself. I start walking down the stairs, and the deeper I go, the more I hear the whispers. They get louder, clearer, like they're calling me. But right before I reach the bottom, I wake up drenched in sweat. I started avoiding the basement altogether after that. I couldn't even explain why. There's nothing down there, just old furniture and some of my grandmother's stuff. But something about it makes my skin crawl. Then, last week, something happened that I can't explain. I was in bed, trying to fall asleep when I felt this pressure, like someone was standing right next to me. I opened my eyes, but there was no one there. The room was dark, but I could still feel it. This heavy presence just watching me. I wanted to scream, but my throat felt tight, like something was choking me. I don't know how long it lasted, but eventually it just faded, like it was never there. I convinced myself it was just sleep paralysis. People experience that kind of thing all the time, right? But something about it felt different. It didn't feel like a dream. It felt real. Since then, things have been escalating. I can't sleep more than a few hours a night, and when I do, the dreams are worse. The shadows in the house seem darker, more oppressive, like they're moving. I've started hearing my grandmother's voice in the whispers now, but it doesn't sound like her. It sounds wrong, like someone imitating her. but they don't know how to get it quite right. 2 days ago, I found something strange. I was cleaning out the attic, just trying to distract myself, when I stumbled on a box I hadn't seen before. Inside, there were some old photos of my grandmother younger, maybe in her 30s. But in one of the photos, she wasn't alone. There was a group of people standing with her, all of them holding hands in a circle. They were standing around something, but I couldn't make out what it was. It was too dark in the photo. But that's not the weird part. The weird part was that there were symbols drawn around them on the floor, circles, stars, shapes I didn't recognize. I don't know why, but seeing that photo made my heart race. I've never been one for supernatural stuff, but something about it just didn't sit right with me. Later that night, I started hearing the whispers again, only this time they weren't just in the walls. They were closer, like they were right next to me. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, and I could feel this presence in the room. I can't explain it, but it felt like the house was breathing, like the walls were alive and closing in on me. I felt cold fingers brush against my arm, but when I looked, there was nothing there. The next morning, I woke up with bruises on my wrists, like someone had grabbed me in my sleep. But I live alone. I don't know what's happening to me. I've tried reaching out to some friends, but they all think I'm just stressed or overtired. I even started doubting myself, thinking maybe it's all in my head. But I can't shake this feeling that something is wrong. Really wrong. Last night, I went down to the basement. I don't even remember why. I just felt this urge, like I had to go. When I opened the door, the air was colder than usual, and the light wouldn't turn on. I took a flashlight and made my way down the stairs, and that's when I saw it. There was a door I had never noticed before, hidden behind some old shelves. I don't know how I missed it all this time, but there it was. Locked, of course. But the key was hanging right there on a nail, just waiting for me. When I opened the door, I felt something shift in the air, like the house was reacting to me. Inside, there were shelves lined with old books, leather-bound with cracked spines and pages that looked ancient. Most of them were in languages I couldn't read, but the symbols on the covers were familiar. They were the same ones from the photo I found in the attic. There was something else in the room too, a mirror, covered in a thick layer of dust. When I wiped it clean, I saw my reflection, but it wasn't right. My face looked pale, and my eyes seemed darker, almost hollow. And behind me, in the reflection, I could see the shadows moving. I don't know how to explain what's happening to me. I feel like I'm losing myself, like the house is getting inside my head. The whispers aren't just in the walls anymore. They're in my mind, and they're louder now. Sometimes I catch myself whispering back, even though I don't understand the words. It's like they're trying to tell me something, trying to pull me deeper into the darkness. It's hard to put into words, but I feel different, lighter, less human, I guess. The whispers don't scare me as much as they used to. They almost feel comforting now, like they've been with me all along, and I just didn't realize it. I don't know what's going to happen next. I feel like I'm on the edge of something, like I'm about to step into a place I can't come back from. But maybe that's okay. Maybe that's how it's supposed to be. If anyone is still reading this, thanks. I just needed to get it all out before whatever comes next. I think I finally understand the whispers now. They were never trying to scare me. They were welcoming me, calling me home. And now, I'm ready. I shouldn't be doing this. The moment I post this, I'm a dead man. But you need to know. Someone needs to know. Project Bluebeam is not a conspiracy theory. It's real, and it's happening right now. The preparations have already begun. What you think you know about it? It's just the surface. They've managed to keep it hidden for so long. They've fed you enough truth to keep you satisfied, just enough to make you think you know something. You think it's about UFOs, alien invasions? No, it's much bigger than that. Look closer. This is about control. Complete, unquestioned control over humanity, over what you believe, over how you think. You ever wonder why religion has been under attack for years? Why faith is portrayed as something outdated? Stupid? Look at the media. Look at the news. Look at how people talk about belief systems. They mock them, ridicule them. That's not an accident. The groundwork is being laid for something far more dangerous. Religion, faith, those things hold power. They give people hope. They make people feel like there's something bigger than the ones pulling the strings. But they don't want that. They want to be the ones controlling everything. And to do that, they need to wipe it all away. Here's how it's going to work. Step 1, they discredit all the major religions, make it laughable to believe in anything. That's been happening for decades now. The mocking, the scandals, the slow erosion of trust in the institutions. It's no coincidence. Step 2, they'll use the most advanced technology you've never even imagined. Holograms, mass mind control, ELF waves. They've tested it in small doses, just enough to gauge reactions. Ever wonder why some UFO sightings are dismissed? It was practice for something bigger. What if I told you that the visions some people claim to have, the apparitions, the voices in their heads, they weren't divine. They weren't real at all. They were created. We have the technology. They can make you see anything, hear anything, believe anything. They've been perfecting it for years. Soon, they'll show you gods in the sky. You'll see Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, maybe even something alien, something otherworldly. But none of it will be real. They will use holograms to display these figures across the world. They'll speak in every language, telling each culture that their gods were wrong. The truth will appear before your eyes, only it won't be truth. It's all part of the plan to introduce a single unified belief system, one that they can control. They will tear down every religion, every belief, until there's nothing left but their version of truth. A truth designed to make us all fall in line. But here's the thing. This isn't the first time. You ever wonder what happened to the gods of old? The pantheons? The Egyptian gods? The Greek gods? You think they just vanished? No, they were destroyed, systematically erased. Humanity didn't just wake up one day and decide to leave behind the gods of Egypt or Rome. No, they were wiped out by the very same technology that's about to be used on us now. That's how Christianity started. It wasn't divine intervention. It wasn't some organic rise of faith. It was orchestrated. The first success of Project Bluebeam. They erased the old gods and installed a new system of control. Christianity. It was all part of their plan. To unify, to consolidate power. The Roman Empire didn't convert to Christianity by accident. It was planned. They needed a religion that would serve their interests. A belief system they could manipulate, use to control the masses, and they succeeded for centuries. But now, they're losing control again. People are waking up. Christianity is failing. Islam is being questioned. People are turning away from organized religion, and they can't afford that. So what are they doing? They're starting over. It's time to erase the old systems and install a new one. Only this time, it won't take centuries. It will take months, maybe weeks. They've perfected their methods. They can make you believe anything they want you to, and they're about to do it again. You'll see things in the sky. You'll think they're gods or aliens, or maybe both. But it will all be fake. Every single bit of it. Here's the truth they don't want you to know. Christianity, it was a lie. A fabricated belief system created by those in power. And now that the powers that be are losing control of it, they're going to destroy it, just like they destroyed the gods of old. And they're going to do it again. This time, it'll be even bigger, global. There will be no escaping it. If you're reading this, you need to be ready. Copy this message, spread it. They'll try to erase it, just like they've erased everything else. Watch the skies, watch the news. Pay attention to the coming weeks. When it happens, remember, none of it is real. It's never been real. It's strange, the things you find yourself doing when you're desperate. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to take a job without asking questions, especially not a job like this. But when you're low on options, you start to convince yourself that nothing is as strange as it seems. That's what I told myself when I took the position as Mr. Barlow's caretaker. The money was too good to pass up, and all they asked was that I follow a few odd instructions. Easy enough, I thought. But now, I wish I'd asked more questions. The mansion was on the edge of town, the kind of place everyone knew about, but no one talked about. I'd driven past it a dozen times, but never really noticed it. Not until I pulled up that first night. The place looked like something out of an old Gothic novel. The stone was weathered, the windows dark, and the ivy creeping up the walls made it look like the house was being swallowed by the earth itself. It was old, ancient even. And there was something about it, something in the air around it that felt wrong. I can't explain it. It wasn't anything obvious. Just this sense that the house was waiting for me, watching me. I tried to shake it off as I made my way to the front door, the gravel crunching under my feet. The agency had said the job was simple. Take care of an elderly man, Mr. Barlow, and follow the rules. It wasn't the first time I'd worked with someone elderly, and honestly, I needed the money. I was behind on rent, my car was falling apart, and I didn't have the luxury of being picky. But the moment I stepped inside that house, I knew something was off. The air was thick, heavy, like it hadn't moved in years. Every breath I took felt like it was coated in dust. The floors creaked beneath my weight, and the walls, God, the walls seemed to hum. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even something I could hear, really. It was just a vibration. A low, steady hum that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. There was no one there to greet me, just an envelope sitting on the hall table, with my name scrawled across the front. Inside, there were instructions. They were simple, too simple. Do not speak to Mr. Barlow directly. Communicate only through written notes. Do not look him in the eye. There are no mirrors in this house. All reflective surfaces must remain covered. At first, I thought it was a joke. What kind of job has rules like that? But I didn't have time to dwell on it. There was no one around to ask questions. And I wasn't about to turn around and leave without the paycheck I needed so badly. So I followed the rules. The house was big, bigger than I expected. The kind of place you get lost in. And I wasn't kidding myself, it was creepy. But the house itself wasn't what scared me. It was the silence. Every room was so still, so quiet, that it felt unnatural. Even the air didn't seem to move. When I finally found Mr. Barlow, he was sitting in a high-backed chair facing the window. The room was dark, the only light coming from the faint glow of a lamp on the other side of the room. I couldn't see much of him, just a silhouette, hunched and still. I remembered the rules, and without saying anything, I placed a note on the tray beside him. I wrote, "Do you need anything?" He didn't move for a long time. I thought maybe he hadn't seen the note. But then, slowly, his hand moved. His fingers were thin, skeletal. He picked up the pen with a tremble and scrawled a reply. Water. I exhaled, not realizing I'd been holding my breath. Water. Simple enough. But there was something about the way his hand moved that made my skin crawl. It was wrong. I couldn't put my finger on it, but the way his fingers twitched, the way his knuckles bent, it wasn't natural. I fetched the water from the kitchen, which, like the rest of the house, was ancient. The pipes groaned as I turned the tap, the water coming out in a slow, sputtering stream. Everything about this place felt stuck, frozen in time, like it hadn't moved in years. When I brought the water back to him, he didn't acknowledge me. He didn't even turn his head, just sat there, staring out the window. I left the glass on the tray, and without a word, I slipped out of the room. That should have been it. I should have just done my job, collected my money, and gone home. But something about the house, about him, stayed with me. I couldn't sleep that night. My mind kept wandering back to the mansion, to the way the air had felt, thick and heavy, to the way Mr. Barlow had moved, his fingers trembling like they didn't belong to him. And those rules, what kind of man needed to be hidden away like that? What was wrong with him? What would happen if I did look him in the eye? I went back the next night, and the night after that. The routine was the same. I'd leave him notes. He'd reply with simple requests: water, tea. Once he asked for soup, but he never ate it. It just sat there on the tray, cold and untouched. And the more time I spent in that house, the more I started to notice things. Small things at first. The way the shadows seemed to cling to the corners, thickening as the night wore on. The way the floors creaked under my feet, but not his. The way the house seemed to groan as if it were alive, shifting and settling in the dark. But the worst was the feeling that I wasn't alone, that it wasn't just me and Mr. Barlow in that house. There was something else there. I could feel it, watching me, waiting. Sometimes I thought I heard footsteps from above or a door closing down the hall. But when I went to check, there was nothing, just silence. Always that oppressive, suffocating silence. I tried to ignore it. I tried to tell myself it was just an old house, creaking and groaning like old houses do. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. Then, one night, it happened. I broke the rules. It wasn't intentional. I swear, I wasn't trying to. But I was tired. Tired of the silence. Tired of the shadows. Tired of the feeling that something was always just out of sight, lurking behind me. And as I passed one of the windows in the hallway, I caught a glimpse of something reflected in the glass. It was just for a second, but I saw it. A shape. Twisted. Wrong. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew I shouldn't look. I knew the rules, but I couldn't help myself. Slowly, I turned my head, my eyes, following the reflection in the window. And that's when I saw him. It wasn't the Mr. Barlow I'd been caring for, not the frail old man hunched over in his chair. This thing was something else. His body was twisted, contorted, his skin stretched thin over bones that shouldn't exist. His face, God, his face was gaunt, hollow, his eyes sunken deep into his skull, glowing faintly in the dim light. His mouth was stretched too wide, his teeth jagged and sharp, like something out of a nightmare. I stumbled back, my breath caught in my throat. I'd broken the rules. I'd seen him, really seen him. And that's when it started. The tingling, the itching under my skin. At first, it was just a tickle, a slight discomfort, but it grew worse. My hands, my fingers, they didn't feel like mine anymore. They were thinner, longer. My skin, too tight. It was stretching, pulling against the bones. I looked down, and for a split second, my reflection caught my eye in the glass. I was changing. My face, my eyes, they were sinking into my skull, just like his. My skin was growing pale, almost gray, and my fingers, God, my fingers were becoming like his, long and skeletal. I ran. I didn't know where I was going. I just needed to get away. But the house, it wouldn't let me go. The doors wouldn't open. The windows wouldn't budge. It was like the walls were closing in on me, trapping me inside. I ran to the bathroom, desperate to see if what I'd seen was real. And when I looked in the mirror, I shouldn't have looked. The reflection staring back at me wasn't me. Not anymore. It was him, Mr. Barlow. I was becoming him. That's when I understood. He didn't need a caretaker. He needed a replacement. The curse, whatever it wasn't about illness. It was about him, about trapping someone else in his place. And now, it was me. I'm sitting in his chair now. My skin feels like it's too tight, my bones aching with every movement. I can feel the transformation creeping through me, slow and inevitable. I don't even remember how long it's been. Days? Weeks? Time doesn't matter here. Nothing matters except the silence. He's gone. He's free. And I'm stuck here. Trapped. Just like he was. Or was it always me? Have I always been him? I don't know. I don't know. I hope the next caretaker follows the rules. But they never do. Some stories don't just haunt your mind. They cling to you like a shadow you can't escape. They follow you, growing darker the more you try to push them away. And tonight, I'm going to tell you one of those stories. A story about something that seems harmless at first, but don't be fooled by its innocent appearance, because sometimes the most terrifying things are the ones that hide in plain sight. It's the story of Annabelle, the doll. Maybe you've seen the movies, maybe you've heard the name whispered in the dark. But what you probably don't know is that the real Annabelle is far more disturbing than anything Hollywood could create. This isn't just some scary movie plot. This is something much worse, because it really happened. Let me take you back to the early 1970s. The story begins with a young woman named Donna, or Deidre, depending on the version you hear. Donna was a nursing student living in a small apartment with a roommate, Angie. Just two young women going about their lives, until Donna's mother gave her an unexpected birthday gift, a Raggedy Ann doll. Now, a doll like that might seem like an odd gift for a 28-year-old, I mean, it's not something you'd expect, right? But back then, Raggedy Ann was a nostalgic symbol of childhood, something comforting and familiar. And that's exactly what Donna thought at first. Just a cute, harmless reminder of simpler times. But nothing about Annabelle was harmless. Not even from the beginning. It started with small things. Things you could explain away if you weren't paying attention. Donna would leave the doll on her bed in the morning, only to come home and find it sitting on the couch. At first, she thought maybe she'd moved it and just forgotten. You know how sometimes you convince yourself you've just misplaced something? That's how Donna felt at first. But that feeling didn't last long. As the days passed, Annabelle's movements became more noticeable, more deliberate. One night, Donna came home to find the doll standing, propped up against the wall. But here's the thing. Annabelle was a floppy, Raggedy Ann doll. She couldn't stand up on her own. So, how had she moved? Who had positioned her like that? Donna and Angie started to get uneasy. They would leave the doll in one room, only to find it in another. Sometimes it would be lying on the floor or slumped over in a different position entirely. And it wasn't just the movements. There were other signs that something wasn't right. Small things at first, like noises, soft rustling sounds, as if someone was quietly moving around the apartment when no one else was home. But soon, those little signs grew darker, more sinister. Donna began to find strange notes around the apartment, messages written on parchment paper in a childlike scrawl, saying things like, "Help us," or "Help Lou," Lou being Donna's fiancé. The strange part? Donna and Angie didn't own any parchment paper. There was no reason those notes should exist at all. But they did. And every time they found one, the chill in the apartment seemed to deepen. Still, they tried to brush it off, tried to convince themselves it was just a strange coincidence, or maybe even a prank. But deep down, they both knew something was wrong, something they couldn't explain. That's when they brought in the medium. They were desperate for answers, and they thought maybe, just maybe, a medium could help them make sense of what was happening. During the seance, the medium told them a story that seemed to explain everything. A young girl named Annabelle Higgins had died near the apartment complex years earlier. Her spirit, the medium claimed, had attached itself to the doll. She was lonely, lost, and drawn to Donna and Angie's kindness. It was a tragic story, and it tugged at their hearts. They felt sorry for the spirit of this little girl, trapped inside a doll, just wanting some comfort. So instead of trying to get rid of Annabelle, they invited her in. They gave her permission to stay. That was their first mistake. From the moment they allowed Annabelle to stay, the atmosphere in the apartment shifted. It was subtle at first, a feeling of unease, like they were being watched. But then things escalated. The knocking sounds started, first on the walls, then the ceiling, then the floor, always just out of reach. The apartment grew cold, even in the middle of summer. And then there were the whispers, soft, faint, barely audible. At first, Donna thought she was imagining them, but then Angie heard them too, whispered voices that seemed to come from the doll itself. Sometimes it sounded like a child. Other times, it was something darker, something much older. And that's when Lou started having the nightmares. Lou never liked Annabelle. From the very beginning, he felt like the doll was watching him, like it was aware. He told Donna to get rid of it, but she didn't listen. And soon, Lou found himself trapped in a recurring nightmare, one that felt too real to ignore. In the dream, Annabelle would crawl up onto his chest while he slept. He could feel her weight pressing down on him, feel her tiny hands around his throat. He couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The doll was trying to kill him. Each time, Lou would wake up in a cold sweat, gasping for air. But one night, when he woke from the dream, he wasn't just sweating, he was bleeding. 7 deep scratches ran across his chest, fresh and painful, as though something had attacked him in his sleep. But there was no one else in the room, no one but Annabelle. That was the breaking point. Donna and Angie realized they were in over their heads. Whatever was inside Annabelle, it wasn't a little girl. It wasn't something they could reason with or help. They needed real help. So they reached out to someone who had dealt with things like this before, Ed and Lorraine Warren. In 1952, Ed and Lorraine Warren established the New England Society for Psychic Research, or NESPR. Their work, delving into the unknown, assisting those tormented by spirits, hauntings, and things that defy explanation. Over the course of 4 decades, they reportedly investigated more than 10,000 cases involving supernatural entities and demonic possessions. The Warrens were renowned paranormal investigators, and if anyone could help them, it was these two. When Ed and Lorraine arrived at the apartment, they knew immediately that something was wrong. Lorraine, a gifted clairvoyant, could feel the presence inside the doll, and it wasn't a human spirit. It was something much darker, much more dangerous. Ed explained that no human spirit could possess a doll. What Donna and Angie had welcomed into their home wasn't Annabelle Higgins. It was a demonic entity. It had used the guise of a child to manipulate them, to gain their trust. But its true goal was far more sinister. It wanted to possess, to harm, to destroy. There needed to be an exorcism. Ed Warren was one of the few individuals within the Catholic Church granted the authority to perform that ritual. Together, he and Lorraine conducted a cleansing, ridding the apartment, the nurses, and their partners of Annabelle's dark presence. But Annabelle herself, she couldn't be left behind. They knew the doll was too dangerous, too powerful to leave in Donna's care. So they took her with them. But even in their custody, Annabelle remained a threat. Ed and Lorraine brought Annabelle to their occult museum, where they stored all the cursed and dangerous objects they had collected over the years. The doll was placed inside a specially built glass case, sealed with protective prayers and blessed by a priest. But even behind glass, Annabelle's influence didn't fade. There were stories of visitors to the museum who mocked the doll, who didn't take her seriously. One man, in particular, laughed at Annabelle, daring her to do something to him. He and his girlfriend left the museum on their motorcycle, still joking about the doll. Hours later, they crashed into a tree. The man was killed instantly. His girlfriend survived, but she later revealed that he had been laughing about Annabelle just before the accident. And the stories don't stop there. Priests who have visited the museum have felt an overwhelming sense of dread when standing near Annabelle's case. Some have refused to even look at her. And one priest, who scoffed at the warnings, picked up the doll and threw her across the room, declaring that God is more powerful than any demon. Hours later, that same priest was involved in a serious car accident. He survived, but barely. Annabelle remains in the Warrens Museum to this day, locked inside her case, but still watching, waiting. There are some who say she is the most dangerous object in the museum. And after hearing her story, it's hard to argue with that. There's a lot of speculation around the Warrens and their life, and many call them fakes and grifters. But one thing is for sure, there are real people who sense bad things around this doll. Are they all in on it too? Is Annabelle just a creepy doll with a few tall tales attached to her? Or is there something darker at play? Something that defies explanation? Whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain. Annabelle's story is not one to be taken lightly. And if you ever find yourself face to face with an old doll, sitting quietly in a corner, remember, not everything that looks innocent truly is. Hey, X. I'm breaking about a dozen confidentiality agreements and likely putting my life in danger by posting here. But if you're reading this, I need you to know, CERN is playing with something far more dangerous than they're letting on. You've seen the weird weather patterns. You've heard about the strange lights in the sky. Maybe you've even seen the videos of people gathering by the sea, staring out to God knows where. This isn't hysteria. It's not random. I should know I was one of the lead researchers on the Portal project. My name is not important, but I need you to listen. I've worked at CERN for almost a decade, mostly on particle collisions and multidimensional theory. I'm not one of the rock stars of physics you hear about. I'm the type who quietly works her 60-hour weeks, methodically analyzing data. About a year ago, I was looped into something called the Event Horizon Project. It was hush-hush, invite only. The aim? Let's just say the official name of the project barely scratched the surface. If you're familiar with CERN's work, you know we smash particles together at near light speeds to explore the fundamental building blocks of matter. But the Event Horizon Project was something else entirely. It wasn't just about observing particles. It was about creating a stable portal. Yes, a portal. They spun it to us as a gateway to better understand unobserved dimensions. They even had a working theory. Think of it like this. Other dimensions aren't separate places in the way we usually think. They occupy the same spatial location as our universe, but vibrate at different frequencies. They're like different channels on a radio. Just because you're tuned into one station doesn't mean the others aren't there, occupying the same airwaves. You just don't notice them until you switch to their frequency. CERN found a way to match those frequencies, to tune into them in a sense, and open a bridge. Theoretically, if you could align the vibrational frequency of two dimensions perfectly, you'd create a resonance that would allow matter and information to pass between them. That's what CERN's Portal project was about. Matching frequencies precisely enough to create a bridge between dimensions, allowing us to look into other realms. But here's the thing about resonating with another dimension. It's not just a window we're creating, It's a two-way door. When you match frequencies, you're in perfect sync. The space between isn't just thin, it doesn't exist at all. And anything on the other side can feel that bridge, can sense that connection, even if it's not like us in any way we understand. Some of the researchers brushed this off as fantasy, but I could tell they didn't really understand the implications of what we were doing. They thought they were simply taking a peek. Our first tests were small, designed to detect even the slightest vibrational resonance. But every time we got close to matching the frequencies, strange things happened. The equipment would go haywire. Energy readings would spike erratically. And sometimes there were distortions, shadowy, flickering shapes appearing and disappearing in our sensor feeds. We assumed it was interference, noise in the data, but in hindsight, I'm not so sure. It felt like something was shifting, like we were brushing against something that didn't quite belong in our world. The higher-ups kept pushing us to keep tuning the frequency closer and closer. They'd say things like, "Think of the scientific implications," and "This could be a Nobel-worthy discovery." But as we approached what they called resonant stability, it was clear that things were moving in a dangerous direction. We weren't just brushing against another dimension. We were actively trying to connect with it, to tear a hole between us and it. And nobody seemed to care about the risk. The worst part? Every time we ramped up the portal's power, weird phenomena started happening around the world. It wasn't until one of our engineers showed me a video that I realized how widespread it was. I still remember him leaning over to me with his phone. "Doctor, you have to see this," he whispered. The video was from a beach in Spain, filmed early in the morning. There was a group of people just standing there, staring out at the ocean, not moving, not speaking. A dozen people at least, all standing in a line, shoulder to shoulder, facing the horizon. Another video popped up the next day, this time from Portugal, then France, then California. It was happening everywhere. There was no way this was random. People weren't going to these beaches for vacation or morning walks. They were compelled. They looked vacant, blank. One video from a beach in Japan showed a whole line of people standing in the surf up to their knees, letting the waves crash over them, staring out to sea as if hypnotized. Something about it felt ancient, primal, like they were answering a call only they could hear. It made my skin crawl. The worst part, no one knew why they were doing it. As I watched the videos, I felt an odd compulsion myself, a tug, faint but insistent, like I too needed to look. But look for what? I told myself it was just paranoia, but the more I thought about it, the more I knew it wasn't. Then the rumors started about the hum. Not everyone can hear it, apparently, but once you do, it's impossible to ignore. A low thrumming sound, barely perceptible, like a deep resonance that you feel more in your chest than your ears. Reports came in from all over, Spain, Japan, and the UK. People described it as a cosmic vibration or a humming from beneath the earth. Some even thought it was coming from the ocean itself. At first, I thought it was nonsense, hysteria. Then, one night, working late at CERN, I heard it myself. A low hum, like a tuning fork vibrating in the back of my skull. I thought I was losing it, but when I asked a colleague, his face went pale. He'd heard it too. We tried to track it, trace its source, but it was elusive, fading, as soon as we catch onto it. And somehow, it always seemed loudest just before a portal test. I'm convinced now that the hum is connected to the portal. It's not just an energy signature, it's a signal. Like something on the other side is reaching out, calling us to open the door wider. And people around the world are hearing it too, even if they don't understand what it is. At this point, I started connecting the dots. The strange weather patterns, the relentless storms battering Spain, the freak lightning, the coastal erosion, all aligned with the portal tests. The lights in the sky, astronomers were calling them auroras, but they were far too far south, and they didn't behave like any natural aurora. Instead, they pulsed in sync with our experiments. One night, I watched from a hill near CERN as strange flickering shadows passed over the landscape. They weren't clouds. I knew in my gut they were reflections, ghosts of something from the other side. And the people on the beaches, I started thinking of them as sentinels drawn to the sea, waiting. For what? I didn't know. I started leaking some of my findings anonymously, hoping someone would pick up on the signs, but no one seemed to take it seriously. Instead, they latched onto conspiracy theories, ridiculing the whole idea or calling these things demons or other such nonsense. Demons aren't real, but these things are, and maybe I deserve that. Even I barely believe what I've seen, but the crazier the theories get, the more they move away from science and into the realm of mythology, the less likely people are to take this seriously. And they need to take this seriously. But I know one thing for certain. Something is bleeding through that portal. And it's not friendly. A few weeks ago, I couldn't shake the feeling I needed to see it for myself. I drove to a secluded beach just before dawn, planning to watch the water, hoping to understand what was drawing people there. I was alone at first, but as the sun began to rise, people started arriving. They stood beside me, silent, transfixed, staring into the ocean. I heard it then, the hum, clear as day, vibrating deep in my bones. It felt like the ocean itself was humming, like it was alive. I wanted to turn away, but I couldn't. I was rooted to the spot, as if I were anchored to the earth. Then I noticed the shadows, those strange shapes in the water. Not waves, not reflections, but dark figures beneath the surface, moving as if pacing, waiting. I thought maybe it was some trick of the light or a hallucination brought on by lack of sleep. But I wasn't alone. Everyone else was staring at the same thing, and we all stood there for what felt like hours, silently watching. When I finally broke away and walked back to my car, I felt strange, disoriented, as if I were only half present. It was like I'd left part of myself back there on the shore, still watching, still listening. Back at CERN, I found evidence in restricted files suggesting these sea gatherings aren't random. Our experiments are aligning with electromagnetic anomalies, and the portal's influence is creating something akin to psychic interference. Humans, especially those near coastlines, are feeling the effects, responding to that call. I'm convinced now that the portal isn't just a gateway. It's a bridge, one that's starting to buckle under the strain of dimensions colliding. And whatever's on the other side, I don't think it's just shadows or whispers. It's something conscious, waiting to cross. When we began, we thought we were connecting to a dimension like ours, just slightly different, a parallel version. Maybe a reality where the variables shifted just enough to make it a near reflection of our own. That's how it was sold to us anyway. But the more I've seen, the more I'm convinced we miscalculated massively. This dimension we're linked to, it's not the same. It feels wrong, as if its laws of nature, its energies are darker, heavier, somehow incompatible with ours. I can't shake the feeling that the beings on the other side aren't just different. They're alien in ways we can't even begin to comprehend. And yet, they seem drawn to us, as if they've sensed us through the portal and are eager to reach through. I don't know what's going to happen if CERN's project continues, but I'm afraid that we've torn a hole in something far older, far more dangerous than anyone realizes. I know how this sounds. If you're still reading, you probably think I'm a lunatic or some conspiracy nut. But think about it. The strange weather, the lights, the hum, the people gathering at beaches around the world, it all started with CERN's tests. You can Google this if you want, and you will see it all matches up. And we're not stopping. There's another one scheduled in just a few days, and each time we push it further. I'm trying to get this message out now because I don't know how much longer we have. I don't know what'll happen when the portal fully stabilizes, but I have a feeling that what's waiting on the other side is going to reach back. So if you're reading this and you live near a coast, stay away from the water. Whatever you do, don't go to the shore. And if you hear it, the hum, do not listen. Because once you do, it stays with you. I've heard it in my sleep and in the silence, and sometimes I swear I hear it calling me, pulling at me. They know we're here. And they're coming. The winter of 1855 was particularly harsh in Victorian England. As January gave way to February, the people of Devonshire huddled in their homes, seeking warmth from the bitter cold that swept across the countryside. These were superstitious times when people still believed in creatures that lurked in the shadows, in forces beyond human understanding. But even the most superstitious soul couldn't have predicted what would be discovered on that cold February morning. A discovery that would make headlines across England, baffle scientists for generations, and leave an entire region questioning everything they thought they knew about the world around them. Before we delve into the events of that fateful morning, we need to understand Devonshire in 1855. This wasn't just any rural region. It was a place steeped in folklore and legend. The locals spoke in hushed whispers about the pixies that danced on the moors, the phantom hounds that howled in the night, and the ancient spirits that dwelled in the rolling hills. But none of these tales could prepare them for what was coming. February 8th began like any other winter day. The previous night had brought a fresh snowfall, coating the landscape in an untouched blanket of white. In those days, before cars and streetlights, before the constant buzz of modern life, snow had a way of muffling the world, creating an almost supernatural silence. The first person to notice something was wrong was a baker in Topsham. He had risen early, as bakers do, to prepare the day's bread. As he stepped out into the pre-dawn darkness, his lantern illuminated something strange in the snow. Footprints, But these weren't the footprints of a late-night wanderer. These weren't the tracks of any animal he recognized. What he saw made him question his own sanity. The prints were distinctive, each one clearly marked in the fresh snow, about 4 inches long and 3 inches wide. They resembled hoof prints, but not those of a horse or deer. These were different. They appeared to have been made by something with cloven hooves, like a devil from a medieval manuscript. But it wasn't the shape of the prints that was most disturbing. It was their pattern. They formed a single line, each print exactly 8 inches apart, not meandering like an animal would walk. A straight line of perfectly spaced, identical marks in the snow. The baker might have dismissed it as a curious anomaly, except for one detail that made his blood run cold. The tracks led directly to his door, paused, then continued on their way. As dawn broke across Devon, similar reports began pouring in. The tracks weren't just in Topsham, they were everywhere. Dawlish, Teignmouth, Totnes. Village after village reported the same mysterious prints. But here's where the story takes a turn. From curious to impossible. The tracks didn't stop at walls. They didn't go around obstacles. They went straight up. Vertical walls, 14 feet high. The prints appeared on one side, continued up the wall, and emerged on the other side, continuing their relentless march across the countryside. They crossed rooftops as easily as they crossed fields. They appeared in enclosed courtyards, spaces completely surrounded by walls, with no way in or out, just pristine snow marked by those same methodical footprints. In some places, the tracks disappeared into small drain pipes, only to emerge on the other side, completely unchanged. Pipes barely large enough for a rabbit, yet whatever made these prints pass through them without breaking stride. The River Exe, a significant waterway that cuts through Devon, proved no obstacle. The tracks would disappear at one bank and resume at exactly the same spacing on the other side, as if whatever made them had simply walked across the water. As news spread, panic began to grip the region. The more superstitious residents were convinced that Satan himself had walked among their homes while they slept. Others, trying to maintain rationality, searched desperately for a natural explanation. Sir Walter Carew, a local squire, organized hunting parties. Armed men spread out across the countryside, following the tracks, looking for any sign of what could have made them. But they found nothing. No creature, no explanation. Just miles and miles of those perfect methodical prints. But here's where the story takes an even darker turn. As authorities investigated, patterns began to emerge. The tracks didn't appear random. They seemed to have purpose. They would deviate from their straight path to visit specific houses, stopping at doors and windows before continuing their journey. Some residents reported strange sounds from the night before, an eerie whistling, a metallic clicking. Others spoke of their animals acting strangely. Horses kicking in their stables, dogs howling without cause, birds falling silent in their cages. The mystery deepened when reports came in from other parts of England. Similar tracks had been found in Hampshire, over 100 miles away. But that wasn't the most chilling discovery. At the exact same time, on the other side of Europe, identical prints were found in Poland. The same size, the same spacing, the same impossible pattern of movement. Over the years, scientists and skeptics have proposed numerous explanations. Some blamed escaped kangaroos from a private zoo, but kangaroos don't walk in single file, and they certainly can't climb vertical walls. Others suggested a balloon dragging a rope or chain, but no rope could leave such precise, hoof-like impressions, and no balloon could navigate through drain pipes or stop at specific houses. Wood mice, hopping in strange patterns. The prints were too large, too precise, and mice don't travel in straight lines for miles. A practical joke. The tracks covered over 40 miles in a single night, appearing simultaneously across a vast area. No human or group of humans could have created such an elaborate hoax in those conditions. But perhaps the most disturbing theory comes from an old document found in a Devon church archive years later. It spoke of similar tracks appearing in the same region in 1755, exactly 100 years earlier, and again in 1655. Some local historians have suggested a pattern, a visitation every century, like clockwork. If true, that would mean the next appearance would be due in 1955. And indeed, in February of that year, several residents of Devon reported strange prints in the snow. But by then, the area was more developed, the snow less pristine, and the reports were dismissed. Which brings us to the present day. As winter approaches each year in Devon, some still watch the snow with wary eyes. Because if the pattern holds true, whatever stalked through those towns on that cold February night might be due for another visit. The devil's footprints remain one of history's most baffling mysteries. We have the sworn testimonies of hundreds of witnesses, detailed police reports, newspaper accounts, and scientific investigations. Yet no one has ever provided a satisfactory explanation for what walked through Devon that night. Perhaps the real question isn't what made those prints, but why. Why did it visit certain houses? What was it looking for? And most importantly, if it returns again, will it still just leave footprints? Or is it building to something else? Something worse? The next time snow falls in Devon, remember this story. And if you hear something walking outside your window in the dead of night, whatever you do, don't look out to see what's making those prints in the snow, because it might be looking back. Deep in the Austrian Alps, the village of Kreisberg holds a dark secret that has haunted its residents for nearly 4 decades. While many towns celebrate the tradition of Krampusnacht with festive parades and costumed revelry, the people of Kreisberg no longer dare to dress as the ancient holiday devil. What happened in December 1985 transformed their celebration from folklore into nightmare. Police records from that winter tell a peculiar tale. On December 5th, as the village prepared for their annual Krampuslauf festival, the local authorities received multiple reports of an unusually large figure moving through the narrow streets. Witnesses described it as far too tall to be one of the local men in traditional Krampus costume, though most dismissed these sightings as excitement over the upcoming festivities. Maria Weber, now in her 80s, but then the owner of the village's only bakery, provided one of the most detailed accounts. The thing I saw that night, she testified, moved like no man in a costume could. Its horns left gouges in the stone walls of buildings, too high for any person to reach. The marks are still there today, though the town council tries to cover them with paint each spring. The festival began at sundown as planned. Locals gathered in the town square, drinking mulled wine and watching the traditional procession of masked figures. But as the evening progressed, something changed. Multiple witnesses reported a sulfurous smell growing stronger as temperatures dropped far below seasonal norms. Around 10 p.m., several parents noticed their children had gone missing. Initially, no one was alarmed. Children often played hide and seek during the festivities, but as midnight approached, 3 children remained unaccounted for. Thomas Huber, age 10, Maria Gruber, age 12, and Stefan Wagner, age 9. The official police report documents what happened next. Officers Johannes Müller and Franz Ackermann were first on the scene at the Huber residence. They found the boy's bedroom window wide open, despite the freezing temperature. Deep claw marks scored the windowsill and walls. Most disturbing was a massive handprint seared into the glass, which subsequent analysis could not explain. Similar scenes awaited at the homes of the other missing children. The search lasted for weeks. Alpine rescue teams combed the mountains. Police questioned every resident and visitor, but no trace of the children was ever found, except for one chilling detail. In each child's room, investigators discovered small piles of coal and birch twigs, items traditionally left by Krampus for misbehaving children. Local school records revealed that all 3 missing children had been disciplined repeatedly that year for serious misbehavior. Thomas Huber for stealing, Maria Gruber for chronic lying, and Stefan Wagner for bullying younger students. Perhaps most unsettling were the recordings from the village church's bell tower that night. While reviewing them for any clues about the disappearances, investigators discovered something unusual. Beneath the normal sounds of revelry and church bells, audio analysts isolated a different sound. What they described as inhuman breathing and the dragging of heavy chains, followed by what appeared to be children's voices crying out in ancient Alpine dialect. To this day, the case remains officially unsolved. The villagers of Kreisberg have abandoned their Krampusnacht celebrations, though they maintain a somber vigil every December 5th. Local officials insist the disappearances must have had a human culprit, yet no one has ever been charged. Strange incidents continue to occur each winter. Children report seeing burning eyes watching through their windows on snowy nights. Deep claw marks appear mysteriously on the walls of homes where children have misbehaved. And every year, just before St. Nicholas Day, 3 small piles of coal appear on the steps of the village church. Most telling is how the village's current generation of parents handle the holiday season. They no longer need to warn their children to behave. The empty chairs at the Huber, Gruber, and Wagner family tables serve as reminder enough. In Kreisberg, they know that some ancient traditions carry consequences far more real than any fairy tale could convey. For as the village's eldest residents will tell you, Krampus doesn't need a costume or a parade. He comes when children forget the old ways, when they think the rules don't apply to them. And his punishment is far more permanent than a simple lump of coal. I need help. I'm disappearing, and something worse is taking my place. It started on Christmas Eve. Looking back, there were signs I should have noticed, like how Emma, my sister, would spend hours staring at empty boxes, or how she collected wrapping paper but never used it, how her depression always seemed to worsen around Christmas, like she was unconsciously remembering losses she couldn't quite name. I was wrapping presents at 3 a.m., desperate because I couldn't afford anything worthwhile for my sister. She'd been battling depression since Mom died, or at least that's what everyone said. Sometimes Emma would wake up crying, talking about sisters she never had. The doctors called it parasomnia. When I cut myself on the wrapping paper, my blood made this strange, shimmering pattern. Something shifted in the air. My hands moved on their own, folding the paper with perfect precision around the empty box. Each crease was exact, like I'd done this 1,000 times before. The paper caught the light oddly, shimmering like dark water, like countless faces screaming silently beneath its surface. I wrapped for hours, though it should have taken minutes. My tears had stopped, but not because I felt better. Something just felt missing. The room seemed dimmer, colors less vibrant. When I caught my reflection in the window, it took a moment too long to appear. When I finally tied the ribbon, I couldn't remember what had made me so upset in the first place. I couldn't remember the last time I genuinely laughed or felt the warmth of excitement about anything. Like the paper had drunk in something vital while I wasn't looking. I told myself I was just tired. Ignored how my shadow seemed fainter than it should be. How the winter air passed through my coat, like I wasn't quite solid enough to feel it properly. But when Emma opened that empty box the next morning, her whole face lit up with a happiness I couldn't feel anymore. Her smile, it looked familiar, but in a wrong way. Like she was wearing an expression I used to own. For just a moment, her eyes flickered with recognition. Not of me, but of something about this scene. Like she'd watched someone else fade before. She hugged me, crying about the beautiful gift, though the box was empty. That's when I noticed her eyes. They sparkled with a joy I remembered having once, a joy I couldn't seem to find inside myself anymore. She kept touching the wrapping paper, running her fingers over it with an absent-minded hunger I didn't understand yet. The change in Emma was dramatic. Everyone at the hospital where she worked noticed. Her whole demeanor had shifted overnight from someone barely surviving to someone radiating joy. People were drawn to her now, especially the kind ones, the givers, like she was unconsciously searching for something. When Dr. Chen, a neurosurgeon she worked with, mentioned his worsening hand tremors during lunch, Emma told him about her mysterious Christmas gift. How opening that empty box had somehow made everything better. He showed up at my apartment that night, hands shaking so badly he could barely hold the empty box. I tried to explain I couldn't help, that I didn't know what Emma was talking about. But then I saw that paper again, shimmering in my drawer like it was calling to me. Had it always been there? The drawer where Emma had stored her collection of paper, never using it, just waiting. My hands moved before I could stop them. As I wrapped, I noticed how sound seemed muffled, like I was underwater, how my fingers sometimes passed through the paper before becoming solid again. 2 days later, Dr. Chen performed 3 perfect surgeries with rock-steady hands. That's when the whispers started. Desperate people began finding me through the hospital network. A mother whose child was in Dr. Chen's ward, screaming with night terrors. A nurse with chronic pain. an old woman waiting for a lung transplant who couldn't breathe. I tried to turn them away, but every time I saw their suffering, that paper would catch the light just so, and I'd find myself reaching for it. Each gift I wrapped took something from me. Their fearful nights, their aching bones, their strangled breaths. It all found a new home inside my skin as I folded and creased that shimmering paper. That's when I started noticing something. At first, it was just echoes, my laugh lingering in empty rooms like someone practicing it. My reflection would continue moving for a split second after I stopped, as if something was learning my mannerisms. I'd catch glimpses of my own smile in windows, but slightly wrong, like someone trying to get it just right. Soon I started seeing her, just glimpses in mirrors at first. Another woman standing behind my reflection, solid, real, wearing my smile. Sometimes I'd catch Emma watching her instead of me, like she knew what was coming, like she'd seen it before. She's in all the mirrors now. When I look at old photos, they're shifting. In some, I'm transparent while she's starting to appear, standing where I should be. In others, my face is blurring while hers becomes clearer. The strangest ones are the oldest photos. Sometimes I catch glimpses of other women in them, other sisters, their faces fading like mine. Yesterday, Emma told me about that time we went camping as kids and made s'mores. I opened my mouth to say I'd never been camping. I'm terrified of the woods. But then I saw that woman in the mirror, grinning. She loves camping. Emma's eyes lit up with recognition, but not for me. For her, like she was remembering all the sisters who came before. Just for a moment, before the paper's magic made her forget again. My memories are changing too. I remember growing up with Emma, but the edges are fuzzy, like watching a movie through gauze. But other memories are surfacing, strange ones. A woman teaching me how to wrap gifts, her face always just out of focus, her hands guiding mine through each fold, each crease. Her voice growing fainter as she taught me, like she was speaking from underwater. Why can't I remember her face? Oh God, I just found an old diary in my desk. The handwriting isn't mine, but it's telling my story about finding the wrapping paper, about giving everything away piece by piece, about seeing another woman in mirrors, about Emma's depression deepening each time a sister fades, drawing in the next kind soul who can't bear to see her suffer. I'm not the first sister. I'm not even the 10th. The paper needs us, and Emma's pain draws us in again and again. When we fade completely, the paper doesn't just find someone new. It creates them, manufactures them from the essence of the sister before. I understand now why that first smile looked so familiar. She's being built from pieces of me, my joy, my memories, my mannerisms, all being woven into this new sister taking shape in the mirrors. And now I'm watching my replacement learn to be me. In every reflection, she's more solid as I become more transparent. Emma's memories are shifting to include her instead of me. Soon, she'll be the only sister Emma remembers until the paper hungers again. The woman in the mirror is wrapping a gift right now. Her hands are moving exactly like mine. Blood on the paper. A shimmering pattern. I can feel parts of myself floating away, like dust motes in sunlight. I have to go. Someone's knocking. Another referral from the hospital. They've brought an empty box, and my hands. Are they even my hands anymore? I can see the wall through them. are already reaching for the paper. If you receive a gift this Christmas, wrapped in paper that shimmers like spilled blood, don't open it. That's not a gift inside. That's me. Edit. Emma just came into my room to tell me about her day at the hospital. I tried to respond, to reach out, but my voice felt thin, distant, like trying to scream underwater. That's when I noticed her eyes weren't meeting mine anymore. She was looking through me, focusing on a point just behind where I sat, where that woman stands in the mirror, the one who's becoming more solid as I fade to nothing. My hands are moving on their own now. I watch helplessly as they demonstrate the perfect way to fold corners, to crease edges. My voice speaks without my permission, teaching techniques I don't remember learning. Like this, I hear myself say, showing her how to make the paper drink blood, how to wrap emotions into empty boxes. The woman in the mirror mimics my movements, becoming more precise with each fold. She's nearly complete now. My smile on her face, my memories in her eyes, my essence woven into her being. Each piece she takes makes me lighter, less real. I try to warn her, to scream about what's happening, but my treacherous voice just keeps teaching. This is how you make the corners sharp, it says, while I dissolve like fog in morning sun. This is how you capture their pain, their joy, their life. Emma just left my room still chatting happily with her real sister. As she walked through the doorway, just for a moment, her smile faltered. She touched the wrapping paper on my desk with that familiar, absent hunger. Does some part of her remember? Does she feel the weight of all the sisters she's lost? I wonder. Did the sister before me feel this too? This terrible lightness? This fading? Did she also watch through vanishing eyes as her own hands taught her replacement how to continue the cycle? Did she understand that Emma's depression wasn't natural, but the paper's way of ensuring new sisters would always be manufactured from our desperate need to help? The paper is glowing again. Someone else is at the door. Soon, so soon, I will be nothing but shimmering patterns on wrapping paper, waiting to be woven into the next sister. Another piece of living gift wrap, crafted from everything I used to be. At least Emma is happy. That was all I can't remember what I was saying. The woman in the mirror is waving to me. She's holding wrapping paper. It's so beautiful, so hungry. Time is like a handful of sand. The tighter you grasp it, the faster it runs through your fingers. I read that quote somewhere, back when I still had time to read, back before I understood what it really meant. Now I know, it's not just a metaphor, it's a warning. It started last New Year's Eve, though I didn't recognize it then. Funny how the mind works. You don't notice the important moments until they're already memories. I was 34, alone in my apartment, scrolling through Instagram. Photos of college friends with their kids, high school classmates posting about promotions, engagements, house purchases. Each swipe of my thumb felt heavier than the last. When had everyone gotten so ahead? The TV droned in the background, some New Year's special. I wasn't really watching. I poured myself a glass of wine, then checked my phone. 10:15 p.m. I had time, except I didn't. I blinked and suddenly the countdown had started. My wine glass was empty, though I didn't remember drinking it. The hosts on TV were already wearing their 2024 glasses, their smiles too wide, too forced. 10, 9, 8. That's when I saw it, not with my eyes, but with something deeper. A ripple in the air, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. But it was winter, and my heating was broken. 7, 6, 5. The ripple became a shadow, formless, but somehow watching. It lingered in my peripheral vision, patient as a predator. 4, 3, 2. I felt it then, the first slip, like missing a step in the dark, that stomach-dropping moment of unexpected freefall. Time didn't just pass, it vanished. 1, Happy New Year. The shadow smiled. I didn't see it happen. Shadows don't have mouths, after all. But I felt its satisfaction, cold as February frost. The slips grew worse as winter melted into spring. I'd sit down at my desk on Monday morning, blink, and find myself staring at Friday's sunset. My calendar filled with events I could barely recall, all marked as completed in my own handwriting. Do it now. Think back on the past year. What can you really remember? It's all there, but it's all like a blur, right? I'd check my phone and find images from parties that felt like half-remembered dreams. Me laughing with friends, the memories foggy around the edges, like an old photograph left in the sun too long. I was there. I must have been. But the details kept slipping away when I tried to grasp them. In each photo, the shadows lurked in the background, growing darker, more defined. Sarah noticed it too. Over coffee one morning, or was it afternoon? She gripped my arm with trembling fingers. Do you ever feel like, she started, then glanced over her shoulder. The cafe was full, but the corner behind her was strangely dim. Like you're losing your grip on time? What do you mean? I have a daughter now. Her voice cracked. Facebook showed me memories from her 3rd birthday party. I remember being there, but it's wrong somehow. Like watching a movie through frosted glass. Her first steps, her first words, they're all there in my mind, but they're soft around the edges, blurring more every time I try to focus on them. Like trying to hold on to the details of a dream after waking. I wanted to comfort her, but when I reached across the table, she was already gone. My coffee was cold. The receipt showed I'd been there for 3 hours. By summer, I'd started seeing the pattern. The memories didn't vanish all at once. They faded in a specific order, like a tide slowly rising up a beach. Simple moments went first. What I had for breakfast, the route I took to work, conversations about weather and weekend plans. I'd find coffee receipts in my wallet, the ink still fresh, but the memory of buying it already soft around the edges. Then it spread to bigger things, important things. My mother called one Sunday. Your speech at Dad's retirement party was beautiful, she said. I've never seen him cry like that before. I checked my photos. There I was, champagne glass raised, giving what looked like a heartfelt toast. I could almost remember it. The warmth of the lights, the weight of the glass in my hand, the proud look in Dad's eyes. But trying to recall the actual words I'd spoken was like grasping at smoke. The shadow in the background was almost human-shaped now, and in the photo, it had its hand on my shoulder. The longer I stared at the image, the more the memory seemed to dissolve like sugar in hot water. Sarah found me again in autumn. She looked older, much older than a few months should allow. "They're getting stronger," she whispered. Her hair had gone gray at the temples. "They're getting bolder now, taking more than before." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Haven't you noticed? It's not random anymore. They're choosing what they take." She replied solemnly. I had noticed birthday parties that felt like watching life through water, the moments rippling and distorting even as I lived them. First kisses that left only the ghost of a sensation, the details bleeding away like watercolors in the rain. Even now, sitting with Sarah, I could feel the edges of the moment starting to fray. "How do we stop it?" I pleaded with her. Sarah's smile was tired, ancient. "We can't stop it. Time gets taken, no matter what we do, but we can." She glanced at the shadows stretching between us. "We can make the moments matter, make them harder to take." She was gone before she finished speaking. The coffee shop was closing. According to my watch, 6 hours had passed. I didn't want to be alone this New Year's Eve. I went to a party, or at least I think I did. The invitation is in my hand, but the address keeps shifting, the letters rearranging themselves like crawling ants. The shadows don't hide anymore. They stand in corners, seat themselves on empty chairs, lean against walls with almost human casualness. I see other people glancing at them, their eyes skittering away like water on hot oil. Some of the partygoers look wrong, too old or too young. Their features fluid, their movements jerky like bad stop motion. I spotted Sarah across the room, but she's aging backwards now, her gray hair darkening, her wrinkles smoothing, getting younger with each tick of the clock. The countdown starts, but time isn't moving right. The numbers flutter randomly. 7, 3, 9, 4. The shadows converge, their voices a whisper of wasted seconds and lost days. "You humans, you always want more time, but look what you do with what you have. Scrolling, streaming, sleeping through the precious moments. We're not stealing your time. We're just collecting what you've already thrown away." I try to argue, but they show me the truth. Screenshots of endless social media sessions. Netflix autoplay warnings. Are you still watching? Mornings slept away. Evenings lost to mindless routines. "But we can give it back," they say. "For a price." Their offer hangs in the air like smoke. One perfect moment, preserved forever. Unchanging, unaging. All it costs is everything else. I understand now, watching Sarah grow younger and younger, why she took their deal. When you're losing time anyway, the promise of keeping just one moment feels like salvation. The shadows wait for my answer as the year dies. The clock strikes midnight. I make my choice. If you're reading this, check your phone. Check your screen time, your watch, your calendar. Look for the memories that feel more like photographs than experiences. The moments that blur at the edges when you try to focus on them. They're watching you right now, counting your wasted seconds, collecting your thrown away hours. They're patient. They have all the time in the world. After all, they took it from us. But here's the real horror. The truth I learned too late. We gave it to them willingly. One mindless scroll, one lost hour at a time. And they're always hungry for more. Time isn't slipping. It's being consumed. And we're the ones setting the table. My name is Anna, and I don't know if I'll ever feel safe again. It started with a hotel. After 3 days of insomnia, the world had taken on that peculiar unreality that comes with sleep deprivation. Shadows stretching too long, sounds echoing too deeply, thoughts fragmenting like broken glass. I was driving aimlessly, searching for anywhere I could rest, when I saw it. A triangular building that seemed to pierce the night sky, its windows reflecting nothing but darkness, despite the streetlights all around. I knew something was wrong the moment I stepped inside. The lobby felt like a vacuum, devoid of the usual hotel sounds. No distant television sets, no rolling luggage, no murmured conversations, just silence pressing against my eardrums. The receptionist handed me a key, their hand trembling ever so slightly. Their skin looked waxy under the fluorescent lights, too pale, too smooth. "Room 111, they murmured, their eyes flickering with something unspoken. When they blinked, it was too slow, like their eyelids were moving through syrup. I told myself it was just the insomnia. The hallway to room 111 stretched endlessly, its dim lighting buzzing faintly. The carpet muffled my steps in a way that felt wrong, like each footfall was being swallowed by something hungry. The walls seemed to pulse slightly, but when I looked directly at them, they were perfectly still. When I opened the door, a wave of unease washed over me. The room was small and unremarkable, but the air was heavy and carried a faint metallic tang that clung to the back of my throat. It tasted like old pennies and fear. Shadows gathered in the corners, too dark and too still. I tried to tell myself it was just my imagination, just the exhaustion playing tricks on my mind. But deep down, I knew. The room began to take me, piece by piece. It started as a weight in my chest, growing heavier with each breath. My thoughts turned darker, clouded by something I couldn't name. A soft tapping sound came from somewhere inside the walls, like fingernails against wood. The first time I blacked out, I woke up by the window, my hands pressed against the cold glass. The second time, I was sitting on the bed, staring at the door, my mouth moving in words I couldn't hear. By the third time, I was in front of the mirror. My reflection stared back at me, unblinking, its head tilting slightly too late. Then it smiled. I wasn't smiling. And that's when I felt it. The evil. The possession wasn't sudden, it was slow, methodical, like a virus spreading through my veins. It started in my chest, an oppressive weight that made it hard to breathe. The fear wasn't normal. It was deep, primal, and cerebral. A dark, all-encompassing terror that went beyond logic or reason. It felt like something ancient had entered me, threading itself through my mind and soul, replacing everything good inside me with a suffocating, crawling darkness. I wasn't just scared, I was consumed. And then the room exploded. The shadows spilled from the walls, crawling toward me like ink. The tapping turned into banging, coming from everywhere. The walls, the floor, the ceiling. The air was suffocating, alive, wrapping itself around me like a noose. I felt it clawing at my chest, pulling at my thoughts, my memories, everything that made me, me. And then I woke up. I shot upright in bed, gasping for air, drenched in sweat. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, The room still and silent. It had been a dream, a horrible, vivid nightmare. I laughed, shaky and hollow, and got up to splash water on my face. My reflection in the mirror looked tired but normal. I packed my bag, eager to leave, but when I reached the door, it wouldn't budge. The tapping started again. The dresser shifted, the shadows crawled, and that's when I realized I hadn't woken up at all. I yanked at the door, desperate to escape, and to my surprise, it opened. But what waited on the other side wasn't the hallway I remembered. It was another room 111, identical. The same tarnished brass numbers on the door, the same suffocating air, the same shadows pooling in the corners. I screamed and ran to the next door, flinging it open, only to find another room, 111, and another, and another. The hallway stretched endlessly, lined with nothing but room 111s, each door a twisted mirror of the last. The tapping followed me, louder and closer with each step. The shadows seeped under the doors, chasing me, consuming the hallway behind me. I ran until my legs gave out, collapsing in the middle of the endless corridor. The air grew heavier, darker, colder. The shadows swallowed everything, and I felt myself falling. I landed in my own bed, my own room, my own sheets, my own ceiling fan, spinning lazily above me. But something was different. The shadows in the corners seemed deeper. The air felt thicker. And when I looked at my phone to check the time, the screen was blank. Not dead, but empty, as if time itself had ceased to exist. I got up, my movement slow and uncertain, and walked to my bedroom door. My hand trembled as I reached for the handle. Behind it, I knew, would either be my hallway or room 111. But I realized with a horror that settled deep in my bones that I no longer knew which one was real. Because that's what room 111 does. It doesn't just haunt you, it infects reality itself. It makes you question every door you open, every shadow you see, every reflection that moves a fraction too slowly. I've been writing this for days now, or maybe hours, or years. Time doesn't work right anymore. You know what I mean, don't you? Those moments when you check your phone and it's 3:47 and you look away for what feels like ages, and when you look back, it's still 3:47, even though you're sure minutes have passed. Or when you're driving a familiar route and realize you don't remember the last 5 minutes. Or was it 5 miles? These glitches have always been there. We just got good at looking past them. Sometimes I think I've escaped. I go about my life. I eat, I work, I laugh with friends. But then I'll notice something. A coworker's smile that holds too long. The way a coffee cup feels simultaneously hot and cold. A door that leads somewhere it shouldn't. Those moments when you call out to someone in public and they turn around, and for a split second, their face isn't quite finished. That's how room 111 works. It doesn't trap you inside itself. It makes you notice the trap that was always there. Think about your memories. Really think about them. That vacation from 3 years ago. Can you remember what you had for breakfast on the second day? Of course not. But why not? Did it really happen? Or were those memories just inserted like furniture in room 111? When you dream, how do you enter rooms? Do you open the doors? Or do you just find yourself inside? And in your waking life, are you sure you're actually opening doors? Test it right now. Try to remember the exact motion of opening the last door you walked through. The feeling of the handle, the weight of the door, the sound it made. You can't, can you? Maybe you never left your bed this morning. Maybe you never went to bed last night. Maybe you're still in that meeting from last week, staring at your laptop screen, and everything since then has been room 111. Or maybe, and this is what truly terrifies me, maybe room 111 isn't a place at all. Maybe it's the truth about reality that we all collectively agreed to ignore. The glitches in our daily existence, the impossible moments we brush off, the memories that don't quite connect. You're noticing them now, aren't you? The slight delay between your thoughts and these words, the way your eyes feel like they're reading, but your mind feels like it's remembering. That faint metallic taste that's always been in your mouth, just below the threshold of awareness. Listen carefully. Behind the ambient sounds around you, behind the traffic or the hum of your device or the silence itself, can you hear it? That soft tapping sound? It's always been there. We just learned not to hear it. Welcome to room 111. Or maybe you never left. You know how sometimes you have those moments where something feels off? Like when you're absolutely certain you left your keys on the kitchen counter, but they're somehow on your bedside table instead. That's how this all started. Just little things that I could brush off as being tired or stressed, or maybe just losing my mind a little bit. The first time I noticed something was really wrong was at my regular coffee shop. I'd been going there every morning for 3 years. Same time, same order. The morning crew knew me. At least, I thought they did. I walked in that Monday morning, and Sarah, the barista who'd been there since forever, who knew my order by heart, she called out, "Vanilla latte for Michelle," like it was the most normal thing in the world. I stood there staring at that cup, at my name. No, not my name. Written in handwriting I didn't recognize. I've never been a Michelle. And vanilla? I hate vanilla. I've ordered the same plain latte every day since I started going there. When I tried to tell Sarah there was a mistake, she looked at me like I was the one who was confused. "You've been ordering vanilla lattes since you started coming here," she said with this concerned look on her face. "Are you feeling okay?" I did what any normal person would do, laughed it off, made some joke about needing this coffee more than usual, and took the drink. I took a sip and nearly gagged. It was sickly sweet with vanilla, exactly what Sarah said I always ordered. But I knew I'd never ordered vanilla before in my life. Everyone else in line was staring at me like I was crazy. So I just left. Threw the coffee in the first trash can I saw outside. The worst part? When I glanced back at the cup in the trash, I could have sworn the receipt showed plain latte instead of vanilla latte. That's how it started. Just a coffee order. Funny how normal everything feels right before your whole world starts unraveling. The little things kept piling up. My desk at work felt wrong. You know when someone uses your computer and changes all your settings. It was like that, but with everything. My monitor was too high. The family photo I keep next to my keyboard was angled differently. My pens were on the wrong side. Little things, stupid things. But then I noticed the decorations in our office lobby, all autumn leaves and pumpkins, which would have been fine, except wasn't it just spring? I could have sworn I'd just been complaining about April showers and planning my summer vacation. I mentioned this to Jenny at work, trying to be casual about it. Hey, weird question, but what month is it? The look she gave me, like I just asked what planet we were on. It's October, she said, real slow, like she was talking to a child. It's been October for almost 4 weeks. I checked my phone. October 24th. Okay, fine. But I remembered spring. I remembered rain and flowers and Easter displays in store windows. I'd just bought a new spring jacket, hadn't I? When I got home that night, I went straight to my closet to find that jacket. It was there all right, but it wasn't the light windbreaker I remembered buying. It was heavy wool. Perfect for October. That's when I started keeping notes on my phone. Just little things at first. What day it was, what I did, what felt wrong. Normal stuff, right? Like maybe I was just stressed and needed to get organized. But the notes, they changed. I'd write something down, absolutely clear in my head, and the next day it would be different. Words I knew I'd written were altered. Times and dates shifted. Even the order of the entries changed. Then I started losing time. Not like when you zone out during your commute and suddenly you're at work, though that started happening too. No, this was different. I'd blink during a meeting and suddenly be back at my desk, hours later, with an inbox full of emails I'd apparently sent, but had no memory of writing. I'd find myself in the middle of conversations I couldn't remember starting. People would reference things we'd apparently just discussed, but I had no recollection of speaking to them at all. And then there was the beeping. At first, I thought it was someone's phone, or maybe a truck backing up outside, but it never stopped. This steady, rhythmic beeping that seemed to follow me everywhere, always just quiet enough that I wasn't sure if it was real or if I was imagining it. When I asked other people if they could hear it, they'd look at me with that same concerned expression Sarah had given me in the coffee shop. The reflections started next. I'd catch glimpses of strange figures moving behind me in windows or mirrors. But when I turned around, there was never anyone there. Sometimes, in the middle of talking to someone, their face would shift. Like when you're looking at a picture on a bad internet connection and it keeps trying to load properly. Once, I was sitting at my desk, holding my coffee cup, and my hands just passed right through it, like I was a ghost. But the coffee spilled anyway, all over my keyboard. When I asked my coworker if she'd seen what happened, she said I hadn't had any coffee on my desk all day. The dreams were what finally made me understand. Or maybe they weren't dreams at all. I'd wake up in my bed, so relieved that everything had just been some crazy nightmare. But then I'd notice something wrong. Like my walls would be a different color, or my door would be on the wrong wall, or my window would show a city view when I live on the ground floor. So I'd wake up again, and again, and again. Each time I was sure it was real. Each time something was just wrong. Do you want to know what it feels like to be trapped in an endless loop of false awakenings? To question every single moment of your reality? To not know if you're awake or asleep or something in between? Last night, if it even was night, I woke up 17 times. Each time something was different. In one version, my bedroom door opened into an endless white corridor that seemed to stretch forever. In another, strange green numbers floated across my ceiling, always just out of focus. The worst was when I heard voices outside my room, clinical and detached, discussing numbers and pressure and response times. Words that meant nothing to me then, but now. That's when it hit me. The beeping isn't some random noise. It's a heart monitor. The time slips aren't memory lapses. They're moments of partial consciousness. Those shifting faces I see, that's my brain trying to make sense of hospital staff moving around while my eyes are closed. Every single reality I'm experiencing is just my mind, attempting to piece together the fragments it receives. Bits of conversations from visitors, the sensation of medical procedures, the constant, endless sounds of hospital equipment. I'm not losing my grip on reality. I'm trying to wake up. But here's the thing that really terrifies me. Now that I know, now that I'm aware I'm in a coma, I still can't wake up. I'm trapped here in this endless loop of false realities, completely conscious of their falseness, but unable to escape. And I have no idea how long I've actually been here. Those springtime memories, that could have been years ago. The October that everyone keeps insisting it is. Maybe that was last year, or next year, or maybe it never existed at all. Time isn't real here. Reality isn't real here. Nothing is real except that constant beeping, that endless, maddening beeping, and the desperate need to finally, truly wake up. Sometimes I wonder if anyone is reading these notes I try to write. If anyone else can see how the words change. Maybe you've noticed it too. The way certain words in this story have shifted since you started reading. Go ahead. Look back at the beginning. Are you sure it said the same things it does now? And that beeping, you've been hearing it too, haven't you? Just at the edge of your awareness since you started reading, getting steadily louder. You probably thought it was something in your house or outside your window. That's what I thought at first too. But now that you're thinking about it, when exactly did you start reading this? What time is it? Are you sure? And if you're reading the ramblings of a girl in a coma, what does that say about your reality? Maybe you should try to wake up now. Like, really wake up. Can you? This is Shaded Girl. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video.